More at willsave.com.
Now, from the Signature Bank Studios. If you're looking for the latest news, insight into what it means, and the sharpest opinion, there's only one station in Chicago where you can turn, and it's this one. We're AM 560, The Answer.
Top of the morning, Dan Proft here, and of course the professional agitators hit the streets yesterday, downtown Chicago.
How? We want justice, you say how? ICE off our streets now! Off our streets now! We want justice, you say how? Justice, you say how? ICE off our streets now!
She sounds fun. Of course, they're always on the streets in Portland, the world headquarters of Antifa, it would seem, the Rose City Antifa, organized. Pam Bondi had something to say about that with President Trump yesterday. We'll get to that a bit later. But the conversation that Kristi Noem relayed on Jesse Waters' program with the mayor of Portland, this guy Keith Wilson, I thought after that Strickland character presided over the destruction of the city and the George Floyd / Kova era, that this Wilson fellow was going to be a little bit better. He was perceived to be a little bit more rational, less of a, sort of milquetoast enabler of, Antifa. But it doesn't seem like that's the case. And the conversation that Kristi Noem relayed that she had with him is prima facie evidence.
I met with him and also the superintendent of the state police. I told them what we wanted. We wanted more security here at the building, a bigger buffer zone to keep our officers safe. We wanted to have their streets opened up again and not let the anarchists run this city anymore, that we would ask them to continue to back us up like we've been asking for instead of what they've been doing the last several months, which is just leaving our officers hang out to dry. The chief asked if I wanted to meet with the mayor, and I said absolutely. Came back and just met with the mayor, and I'm so extremely disappointed. He's continuing to play politics, did not commit to any of those promises, and said that he'd give me an answer by tomorrow, and I'm hopeful that he will. What I told him is that if he did not follow through on some of these security measures for our officers, we were going to cover him up with more federal resources, and that we were going to send 4 times the amount of federal officers here so that the people of Portland could have some safety. They could have some security. Today, Jesse, we went and got a sex offender off the streets here in Portland that had been violating minors, and we're going to bring him to justice. And this Portland mayor tried to brag about him making our streets safer. No. Absolutely not. It is our federal CBP and ICE officers that are cleaning up this city, and every single day they're going to stay dedicated to doing that. They said that they were glad that that was happening, but that they weren't going to change their posture. They're continuing to. Here's the deal, Jesse, is they're more scared of the anarchists that are down on the street right now yelling horrible, horrific threats at our officers than they are of the officers or the people that live in this city. Right next to this building is an apartment building filled with people who deserve to be able to come in and out of their building safely. I asked the mayor, I said, do you get to go home at night and walk from your car into your building and do so safely? Do you get to drive to work and be safe while you do that? I said, those people don't get the opportunity to do that.
The mayor of Portland, he didn't go full Brandon Johnson and declare Portland to be an ICE-free zone. But he did say this: I continue to maintain that the tactics used by federal agents at the ICE facility are troubling and likely unconstitutional. That's what you get from all of these open borders politicians, these pro-lawless mayors and governors, lawlessness. You just get sort of the declaration that something is troubling, that it's unconstitutional, that it's against our... but you never get the details. And to the extent they share anecdotal details, they're always of the generic variety. Schools are being cased by ICE officers. Children in zip ties. Oh, really? Where did that occur? I don't exactly have those details at the ready. No, of course not. For more on all of this, we're pleased to be joined by Todd Lyons, who is the acting ICE director. Todd, thanks for joining us. Appreciate it.
Hey, Dan. Appreciate it. Thanks for having me on.
Pick a big city mayor, any big city mayor. It's sort of the same story in terms of the that party's representatives at the mayoral and in states like Oregon, Illinois, gubernatorial level. They are quietly thankful that ICE is removing repeat violent offenders in this country legally from the streets, but they won't acknowledge it. And not only will they not acknowledge it, they'll turn right around and call you terrorists and racists, as our governor has.
Yeah, that's a frustrating thing. Even before I was the acting director, when I was a field level leader, we'd run into elected officials that always want to thank us quietly. They'd recognize exactly what we were doing, yet leave that meeting and then go ahead and go scorched earth on us in the media. We're used to it. I love the fact that the mayor called it an ICE-free zone. The fact of the matter is, ICE has been doing immigration enforcement and criminal law enforcement since its inception back in 2003. And we've been in Chicago, and we've been making significant impacts, even before January 20th. So what's frustrating for me is the fact that, I see every day, we put out in the media every day, the heinous criminal aliens that we have arrested in Chicago and in Illinois in general, yet that falls on deaf ears, right? And all they're focused on is protesting at our facilities. It's really frustrating for us. Well,
it's more than protesting, of course. I mean, just this weekend, the two attempts on ICE officers' lives, and that's not me saying it. That's actually the Chicago chief of police saying it when the two different individuals used their vehicles to try to did attack ICE officers. And so, your reaction and your response to the rhetoric coming from the Governor Pritzker, from Mayor Brandon Johnson, against the backdrop of the shooting at the Dallas ICE facility, against the backdrop of what happened this weekend with multiple arrests and lives of ICE officers being endangered.
Yeah, it's extremely dangerous. A lot of those comments are disgusting. It's aimed at federal law enforcement officers doing a federal law enforcement mission and enforcing the laws that Congress has enacted. I understand people's position. They may not like immigration enforcement, then change the law. Any ICE director would sit there and stand with elected officials to change it however they want. But right now, we're going to enforce the law the way it is. And to incite violence, to say to resist ICE agents, there's such a minority out there of really crazy anarchists that will take those comments to an extreme. And look at Dallas. I've always been asked, what keeps me up at night? And Dallas was my worst nightmare. Here we are as a major city, and ICE officers are under sniper fire. That should never happen. And what was frustrating is just the night before, the governor of California goes on a nightly talk show and says that he would push back and resist ICE. Well, if you have elected officials saying to resist law enforcement, of course someone's going to take that to the extreme. And that's what we're seeing now. It's not a peaceful protest when someone uses, a 1-ton, 2-ton SUV to try to run CBP or ICE officers off the road or surround their vehicles, smash their tires, carry weapons to a protest. That isn't the First Amendment. That's lawlessness. And unfortunately, it's a lot of the comments of elected officials that are stoking this violence against my officers.
And Brandon Johnson suggesting that federal law enforcement officers should be arrested if they violate his his ICE-free zone ordinance, signs where you're not allowed to stage on this area of public property, that area of public property. Are you in contact with the chief of police in Chicago, Snelling? Do you have any concern that there's going to be any sort of confrontation between law enforcement agencies?
No, me personally, I haven't. I know the field leadership on the ground has been in good contact with the superintendent and the chiefs of police. I don't think this rhetoric, putting law enforcement against law enforcement helps anyone or really makes anyone safer. I'm not concerned about what the mayor signed yesterday because we don't need city parks or we're not going to go to a school to stage, right? Mm-hmm. Like I said, ICE has been doing our operations without this ICE-free zone. We'll continue to do it. I do appreciate the superintendent's comments, though, that he flat out said that any attack on law enforcement is wrong. Yeah. And I think that Chicago PD will come to our aid now. But, yeah, pitting law enforcement against law enforcement doesn't make anyone safe.
That South Shore, that apartment complex in South Shore on the south side of the city that was raided by ICE, this is something that has been used this week as an illustration of ICE's heavy-handed tactics, quote unquote unconstitutional tactics. Do you want to address what went down with that the raid on that apartment complex?
Sure, 100%. So that was that was a targeted criminal operation based on intelligence and federal warrants between Customs and Border Protection, Homeland Security Investigations, and the FBI. Now, what a lot of it's not being reported is the fact that this was turned into an abandoned apartment complex on the south side that Tren de Aragua TDA gang members had taken over, where we had intelligence that they had weapons, explosives, and were occupying many of the vacant apartments in there and pretty much terrorizing the poor residents that were still there. So when law enforcement has any intelligence like that, when we're facing known gang members that are now designated a foreign terrorist organization, of course we are going to go in with our SWAT teams and our special operations teams. Now, what came out of that, instead of being thankful for us taking back that apartment complex and getting rid of those known gang members, we get accused of separating families. We get accused of zip tying children. There was a horrible photo that went around, whether it was AI or some other situation that had nothing to do with us, yet we get accused of that, right? Like any law enforcement mission, we have to identify everyone in that apartment complex, and we did, and those who were U.S. citizens were released. Those who were minors were released. But what frustrates me is the fact that the gang members we took out of there, the public safety threats, no one is bringing that up, right? And that's what's frustrating.
So, walk us through just how ICE works, and in response to comments that you get. I mean, it's rather incredible, but J.B. Pritzker again this week said basically, in addition to previously saying that ICE is just in the business of terrorizing and being cruel for cruelty's sake, he also said that ICE agents are just targeting non-white people. Just to harass non-white people, so they're just basically racially profiling, is what he's saying, and going up to people that are black and brown and asking for their papers and so on and so forth. That's his accusation, and your response in terms of how things are actually done.
What I could tell you from immigration and customs enforcement standpoint, what we do is targeted criminal enforcement, meaning that if someone's arrested by the Chicago PD and under their sanctuary policy, they've been released. We'll get that biographical data. We'll research their immigration history, their criminal history, and we'll go and target that individual specifically. Or if there's someone that has been ordered deported by an immigration judge under the Department of Justice and has not complied with that deportation officer, we'll go ahead and effect that arrest. Now, what we're no longer doing is turning a blind eye to any immigration violator, right? So if we go and because the city of Chicago released a known sex offender back into the community, and we conduct a traffic stop, and there might be 2 or 3 other individuals in that vehicle after we secured the scene and identified those people, and they're here illegally, well, we're no longer going to turn a blind eye. We're going to arrest them as well. The one thing I would say to a lot of elected officials is if you say we're terrorizing your neighborhood, then turn over these criminal aliens in a safe, secure spot, because you've already deemed them a public safety threat. You've already arrested them and put them in your local jails. So why would you not turn them back to us so we can remove them from the country and remove them from the communities instead of letting them go back and be a repeat violator? So ICE doesn't indiscriminately go out and just pull someone over because they're black or they're brown. We know exactly who we're going for. But like I said, under President Trump, we are no longer going to turn a blind eye to any immigration violation. We're going to enforce the law the way it's written. And I think that's what's frustrating people.
And I mean, I suspect there have been cases of mistaken identity, mistakes that are made when you've got 20,000 officers across the country doing this sort of work every day. But I mean, the point is to say, when mistakes are made or we've got the wrong guy, there's acknowledgement of that. There's, a corrective action that's taken, and there's transparency. And I think that's all anybody could ask for. And it frankly helps to diffuse and dispel some of this mythology that's being promulgated by, people that are anti-ICE, open borders, professional agitators.
Oh, 100%. And like you said, those types of situations happen across the board in every law enforcement aspect. No human's perfect, right? But instead, people like to capitalize and pounce on our smallest mistakes we have. So not only do our officers have to take the utmost security precautions and officer safety tactics to ensure they go home safe to their family every night, it's almost we have to be perfect on every arrest now, or else the media or these agitators or elected officials will just throw stones and cast us again as Nazis, Gestapos, racists, words that should never be used with law enforcement.
You mentioned the profiles on the people that you arrested. I got a DHS release this week that had about a dozen of them, and I shared that with our listeners. But is there a sort of a running listing and details on people taken into custody and their profiles like this release I'm referring to? Because I know the report is there have been more than 800 people apprehended by ICE since Operation Midway Blitz started, and I don't know where there's the best repository to get this information.
Sure. If you go to any of our social media sites, you go on X, on DHS.gov or ICE.gov, you can actually see what we're dedicated to is posting the worst of the worst, because we want the people of Chicago, we want the American public to see exactly who we are arresting. We're proud to say that over 70% of all the criminal aliens that we are arresting have either convictions or pending heinous charges, right? And a lot of these individuals flee their home country, and while they may not have a criminal record here in the United States, they're wanted for some of the worst crimes because they know they can go to a lot of these sanctuary jurisdictions and walk around with impunity because they're not going to be taken into custody, they're not going to be removed to their home country. So that's one big thing for us that's frustrating. But you can go to any of our social media sites, Operation Midway Blitz. It was in honor of Katie Abraham.
Yeah.
A great young lady that lost her life because there was someone in the country that had been encountered a few times that shouldn't have been here that killed her and her best friend in a DUI accident. That's what ICE is focused on. And unfortunately, a lot of the political rhetoric loses the public safety aspect. So I really encourage all your listeners or anyone that can hear this to really go to our social media sites, go to our websites. You'll see exactly who we're arresting.
Todd Lyons is the acting ICE director. Todd, thanks so much for your time. Appreciate it.
Hey, thanks so much. I appreciate it.
And Todd Lyons joined us on the Turnkey.Pro answer line.
The stories you need to know to start your day. This is Chicago's Morning Answer on AM 560. The Answer.
At AlmostFreeTeeth.com, they're dedicated to making smiles great again. If you have medical PPO insurance, find out how you could save 90% off on average to get a beautiful dental implant-supported smile. Check if you qualify right now at AlmostFreeTeeth.com.
For decades, Dennis Prager shared his wisdom with listeners around the world through his lectures, courses, interviews,